the striper, also known as the striped bass. Here in Indiana, you don't really think of having big stripers. However, that is not the case. There are some big stripers in Indiana. The stripers are an anadromous fish, and I don't know how that's said exactly, but what they are is they're a fish that can move between saltwater and freshwater. They're found primarily along the Atlantic coast of North America. It's also been widely introduced to inland recreational fisheries across the United States. Striped bass found in the Gulf of Mexico are a separate strain referred to as the Gulf Coast striped bass. Pretty inventive, isn't it? The striped bass is a state fish of Maryland, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. Something that people really don't know much or realize about the striped bass is that they grow to be huge, man. Some of these things are huge. The striped bass is a typical member family of the Moronidae in shape, which means they have a streamlined silvery body marked with longitudinal dark stripes running from behind the gills to the base of the tail. Common mature size is 20 to 40 pounds. The largest specimen recorded was 124 pounds. That was netted back in 1896. Striped bass are believed to live up to 30 years, with the average size and length being 20 to 35 inches and approximately 5 to 20 pounds. And that's actually not hard to catch a 20-pound striper. In a private pit here, I think it's a strip pit, an old gravel pit here in Indiana, a lady caught a 20 or 25 pounder. I think it's 25 pounder just last year. Might have been in 2019. But that's something that they're a hard fighting fish. That's just something you don't think of when you think of sport fish here in Indiana. The Indiana state record for the striped bass is 39.08 pounds. That's an impressive fish, folks, and like I said, they are extremely good fighters. Striped bass, their life cycles, they spawn in fresh water. He says, I'm reading from Wikipedia here, and they say that they spend their natural lives in salt water, and then they will migrate back into a freshwater system and spawn, and then they head back out to the salt waters. However, as you probably know, here in Indiana, there's no salt water that is attached to our freshwater systems. But according to the Wikipedia article, they said that there was like 4 main important bodies of water, the breeding stocks of striped bass, which was all East Coast, Chesapeake Bay, Massachusetts Bay, Cape Cod and Hudson River, and the Delaware River. But what's happened, they used to migrate up into these rivers and spawn, and what's happened is that's mainly been a thing of the past. That it says this occurred until like 1860s, and then I guess landlocks and so on and so forth, dams and such were built, kind of preventing that. So the striped bass have adapted to breeding and living their lives mainly in fresh water. You still have the saltwater fish. Something else that's really cool too is striped bass have been introduced into waters in Ecuador, Iran, Latvia, Mexico, Russia, South Africa, Turkey. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I don't know if they're introduced there for food reasons or for sport fish reasons, but that's pretty cool thinking that, those fish have been introduced into those waterways. That just shows the popularity of them. And like I say, here in Indiana, you don't really think of stripers as being a trophy sport fish, it's not real high in the list. And I think that's because they're not really abundant. Striped bass have also been hybridized with white bass to produce a hybrid striped bass known as the wiper. So you got the striped bass, which is stripers. You got the hybrids, which are called wipers, and you got the white bass, which is white bass that we call silver here in Indiana, which they should be running here real soon, and I can't wait. Striped bass are great for sport fishing and have been introduced to many waterways outside their natural range for that reason. Okay, they love to catch them. If you ever catch one, you'll see why. Striped bass will eat live bait and fresh baits, including bunkers, clams, eels, sandworms, herring, bloodworms, mackerel, shad, bluegill, you name it. They also will eat crayfish, bucktail jigs, and silver spoons. I saw about a 12 to 15 pound striper caught at Oakdale Dam last year on a white hair jig. Now, some ways to catch stripers. One way here in Indiana is to fish the tailwaters of dams like the Norway Dam, Oakdale Dam, places like that. And the way you fish those is you can throw a silver spoon through the rapid waters and just reel them back, like a small bait fish swimming through those waters, and stripers will hit those, as well as, like we said, the white bucktail jigs, the white hair jigs, things like that. Reel them through there. You'll need a pretty good sized one, a pretty decent weight, because they are you're fishing the heavy flowing waters. Another way to fish them that I've seen very productive is just like fishing for catfish. Okay, they will hit the live baits just like catfish will hit live baits, like bluegills and shad and bullhead even, and any of the live baits that you would use for catfish, stripers will usually hit that too. I've also seen stripers caught using a Carolina rig, which is just a sinker with a 18 to 24 inch leader tied to a circle hook, and throw out some good fresh cut bait, throw it on the bottom, and bam, you got that's the same way you fish for catfish, and you got a good chance of catching striper. One way that I saw people catch striper that I've tried and have not successfully done it was just a hook and a big chunk of bait, like a big piece of Asian carp, big piece of shad. So it'd be just a hook with no weight, big chunk of bait, throw it out and let it slowly go to the bottom. Again, just like fishing for catfish. And those are a few ways to fish for stripers. Stripers are somewhat of a delicate fish, believe it or not, even though their size is big and they're hardy. Okay, but they're also delicate, and by that I mean, if you fight a fish for a long time, a striper, in cool water, they don't have a very hard time surviving that. But in the hotter waters where the oxygen levels are lower, if you get into a good tangle with a striper, you'll have to do your best when releasing the fish. You got to try to get the fish back as soon as you can. But then once you do, put it in the water, and you'll see people grab their tails and rake water back and forth over their gills to revive them. You have to do that with stripers in hot water, in the warmer summer waters, because the oxygen level is low and they do not take that very well. They have a hard time with that. A lot of times you'll see people like on YouTube catch them in warmer waters and have to take them home because they just won't revive. I recently watched a video of Cole and Jay on YouTube where they took a striped bass and filleted it. Then they chunked the fillets up, and I believe they boiled them. I don't recall how they cooked them now, but then they made like a the butter lobster sauce, and they dipped it in the butter, and they said it was almost identical to lobster. So, do they eat well? Yeah. Here's a couple other ways you can cook striped bass. Let's say striped bass. It's a white meat with a mild flavor and a medium texture. Okay, you can grill it, steam it, poach it, roast it, broil it, saute it, deep fry, batter or no batter. It doesn't matter. You pretty much eat or prepare this fish in any way you would do any other fish. That's going to do it for this week, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video on stripers. Thanks for joining us. And hey, don't forget to go to our social media sites that you see down on the bottom of your screen. And we hope to see you there. Until then, we'll see you out there somewhere, folks. Have a great one.
What are you talking about? Creek Beaters TV? That's awesome.